mentioned there was no evidence for God's existence. You mentioned that in passing. That is odd to me. If you said there's no proof, you'd have no argument. But no evidence, did you really mean evidence or did you mean proof?
I would say both are true, but I understand why you're making the difference here. So let me ask, what do you regard as evidence for God's existence?
Your existence and my existence. That it came from rocks is, to me, an infinitely bigger leap of faith into non-reason than to believe a creator made it. DNA is information. How could information not come from intelligence? I mean, the number of evidence arguments is just enormous. The complexity of the eye, the complexity of the liver and pancreas, this all came about over time on its own. It strikes me, frankly, as absurd. I asked Charles Krauthammer, who was completely secular, is a great American thinker. I'm sure you agreed with him on many things. To my shock, he was on my show, and he's unfortunately since passed away. And I asked him what he thought of atheism, and I thought he'd say, "Look, personally, I'm not religious. I may not be an atheist, but I get it." And he laced into it. He said, "Of all the ideas, that is the most absurd. That everything came from nothing, and." So you're asking me what evidence there is? The evidence is enormous. I have no proof that God exists, but the evidence is enormous.
So it is amazing what has happened in terms of the rise of life just at any level, even just plants, right? The existence of plants out of
even bacteria.
So these are scientific questions, right? Where did this stuff come from and how did it happen? Maybe life has always been an integral part of the universe. Maybe it didn't begin at some point. I don't know. These are scientific questions. But there's a fallacy involved, a literological fallacy involved in saying, because you don't know where life came from, or because you can't explain it scientifically, ergo God, right? This is the fallacy of argument from ignorance. It's the idea that your ignorance of this is proof of this other thing, but it's just not. Now, I grant you, it is an amazing thing that life, the evolution, I don't know whether you believe in evolution, but I think evolution is pretty solid science from what I understand. And it's just remarkable to me, even just accepting evolution as science, how it all happened. But there does seem to be a pattern that explains much of this. And if we can't explain every last drop of it right now, I wouldn't throw to the wind and say, well, just because, the fact that you can't explain this now means that God did this. That's the sort of the God of the gaps thing that I just would take issue with.
But the issue is not gaps, in my opinion. Science will never answer why anything exists. Science can only answer how. It can never answer why. That's not its province. It's not religion's province to answer how. I don't learn geology or chemistry from the Bible, but I learn why, which ultimately is more important to me in any event. So the question remains, why is there anything and why is there such complexity? These aren't little gaps. These are Grand Canyon-esque holes.